of them. Those who don't have seats here, they can go upstairs. There is plenty of places upstairs. Good evening to those who have joined us in Jerusalem, journalists, influencers, bloggers, and more. Welcome. My name is Nitzan Chen. I am the director of the Government Press Office. It is a great honor for me to see you all here in Jerusalem and media representatives from around the world who have joined us via Zoom. Many thanks to our hosts from the Friends of Zion Museum, led by the founder, Dr. Mike Evans, who has arrived from the US especially to join us this evening. Where are you, Mike? Okay. I would like to welcome the representatives and families of the hostages from joining us tonight, and we bow to your extraordinary courage. We cannot even imagine how difficult it is for you. The last 3 months have perhaps been the most traumatic and tragic in our Israeli experience, and the battles keep on raging, the sorrow keeps on coming. Just 2 days ago, we commemorated International Holocaust Day, and we frankly didn't think that events of that terrible time would ever happen again. But we were wrong. And the same evil, hatred, and brutal ideology seeking the wiped Jews of the face of the earth has shown its ugly face in full technical color for the whole world to see. תסדר את הסאונד בבקשה. But there are those who do not see. There are those who choose not to see. And there are those who choose to distort what they see. If anything, these last 3 months have taught us that Mark Twain so famously said more than 150 years ago, a lie can travel half a way around the world is putting on its shoes. So our battle is not just physical one, raging just an hour and a half drive from here. We are unfortunately a battle-scarred nation, and this has built up a certain resilience. This battle is different in the eyes of the world, which can be manipulated by the written word. Fate feels impressive via a 2-inch frame and fattened by the hypocrisy of the media in order to promote a toxic and trendy narrative. I've been working as a journalist for many, many years, and I've also run spin on a good scoop. However, without sounding like old men, we are in unprecedented journalist time, and our speakers tonight will outline just what we are dealing with the Hamas and with the situation. Until then, the GPO, alongside other official units led by the Public Diplomacy Directorate, have been working intensively as part of the war effort since October 7. Let's now watch a short movie showing what we are doing.
I didn't know this kind of stuff. How they make it such cruel things and how the human being become like this for another human being.
It was something very cruel. It was something very brutal. I felt disgusting.
I didn't know this kind of stuff. How they make it such cruel things and how the human being become like this for another human being.
It was something very cruel. It was something very brutal. I felt disgusting.
Challenge remains a challenge it has always been. We are better than our enemy. We will not do what our enemy does.
הטבח שהיה כאן בכפר עזה ב-7 באוקטובר היה אחד הימים הקשים מאז פרוץ הקרבות. עשרות הרוגים, עשרות חטופים ונעדר אחד. האתגר שלנו בלשכת העיתונות הממשלתית ומערך ההסברה הלאומי להשאיר את העיתונאים הזרים כאן, ביישובי העוטף, שיראו את הזוועות שהיו כאן ולא יעברו לצד השני. For 3 hours that's something going on. מה יהיה? So our next speaker is the coordinator for the hostages and missing. He needs to be in the Kriya in Tel Aviv less than an hour to talk with the Prime Minister. תסדרו בבקשה את הסאונד. He made an effort to come here tonight despite the time schedule. From the very beginning of the war, Israel set its aims clearly, and among them was, of course, the return of our 136 women children. What is Ariel's point? Please, your first song till we will fix the problem in the music. We okay? Oh, okay. Shh. Thank you. With God help. As I said, our keynote speaker for tonight needs to go to solve some problems with the hostages. Therefore, I really need your attention now. From the very beginning of the war, Israel set up its aim clearly, and among them was, of course, the return of our 136 women, children, elderly, soldiers, and civilians, who are still being kept hostages in the evil hands of Hamas. I would like to introduce the former Brigadier General Gal Hirsch, who is at the forefront of the painful and difficult negotiations in order to bring our brothers and sisters home. Mr. Gal Hirsch, the podium is yours.
Shalom, good evening. Thank you, Nitzan, for inviting me, distinguished guest, Dr. Evans. Thanks very much for hosting us. Most appreciated. Ladies, gentlemen, October 7th is an unprecedented event. I am dealing with counterterrorism for decades, fighting, struggling myself, researching, teaching in universities worldwide and in Israel. My colleagues and I never saw such event with such magnitude, such horror, such type of brutal massacre. When the war started, I was at my reserve unit and called immediately to Prime Minister Netanyahu. The Prime Minister asked me to take the mission of bringing back the hostages and actually to be the coordinator for hostage and missing. Of course, the answer was only one answer. Hineni, here I am. I had to design the operation and actually have decided and approved with Prime Minister Netanyahu 4 main efforts. First, to understand the picture and to understand much better what is happening, what is going on, how many missing, how many people are hostages, where are they, who are they? I'd like you to know that in the first 24 hours of the war, the picture was a part of fog of war, and we knew that we have 3,200 missing. It took time. It was, and still very painful. From 3,200 missing today, we have 136 hostages in Gaza, in the hands of the enemy, terror organization Hamas. Unfortunately, we had to tell the terrible message to 30 families of the 136. And these hostages are not alive. They were murdered in captivity from the event of October 7th until the last days. Our hostages are there, they are in danger, we want them back home. So the first trajectory, first effort was building the picture. The second one, the effort of negotiations, operations, and intelligence. The third is foreign affairs and international influence. And the fourth one is building a reliable, effective address to the hostages and missing families. And just think, what was it like for so many family members of thousands of missing people in the first days and until now? What is it like? What does it feel? How does it feel to be a family member of a hostage in Gaza? They live in a nightmare. And we are doing our best to bring some relief. And any way we can assist them and help them, that's what we do, my team and myself, 24/7, every day. We had actually to build a new type of alignment, a unique one, new one. It did not exist before October 7th, and we had to build actually a missing and hostage big national alignment with all these 4 efforts that I've just mentioned. During this project that we're still working on and still try to improve ourselves and try to be better and better, we had the assistance of our friends and allies that came from all around the globe to assist us. The first one was actually the delegation that has arrived to Israel, directed by President Biden, and United States of America actually stood next to Israel with its best efforts to assist us and support us. And in my team, there is actually an official delegation, special envoy from the White House, from SPIA, the special envoy for hostage and missing from the White House. And it is Roger Kerstens and Mr. Stephen Gillen and their teams from all the secret services and all the corps of United States of America. And after them has arrived, of course, the task force that we've built together from Great Britain, Germany, Canadian, Austrians, and many others that just came to help and support. And this is the time to say thank you. We appreciate it. And actually, these are our friends and allies during this terrible war. Most appreciated. Along this period of time, we could learn from our partners, our friends that came from overseas. We learned from them, and they're learning from us, because the way that we need to cope against such a crisis that has never happened ever in modern history is something that need to be learned from, because if terrorists will bypass Israel or infiltrate through our fortress on the living spring of terrorism, everything will arrive to the neighborhoods worldwide, and terrorism will knock on the doors all around the globe, and the terrorists are inspiring each other. We learned about it many years ago. The event that we are facing and experiencing is very, very complicated. And the social media and the media is a real factor in every war, and there is no doubt that it is a real factor during this hostage crisis that we are facing and coping with. An important time in my schedule, I find myself every day actually dealing with disprove rumors, fake news, and many times even deep fake. Wrong information and breaking news that are not really news, putting terrible burden bringing terrible sorrow to the families of the hostages, and actually it makes a difficulty not only for them, for all of us. Many of that comes from the social media, but not only. We are struggling against terror organization. It's a monster, and it creates a big difficulty because we are dealing actually with psyops, psychological operations that our enemy is trying to use very effectively along the war from the very beginning of it until now. It affects operations and all the activities 24/7. But, ladies, gentlemen, the media, and I am saying it especially here in this distinguished forum, the media has a very important role in struggling against terrorism, in leaving this subject of releasing the hostages on the international schedule 24/7. This is very, very important mission. It is very important mission in struggling against the psychological warfare that our enemy is using, and by delivering, bringing important, reliable information to the public and to decision makers. And there are also good hints, even good news regarding responsible behavior of the media. When we've started the last pulses of releasing hostages, just before it started, I stood in front of cameras and asked the media, please do not publish the lists of the hostages. It was taken as a rare request of the coordinator for missing and hostages. And many people told me that won't work. They're not working for you. But I saw with many people, all the Israelis and the rest of the world, that the media can be responsible when it deals with human lives, and the lists were not published until the hostages were in our hands after crossing the passage. And it has happened day by day. And this is most appreciated and says a lot about responsibility and the capability of being responsible, decent, and reliable. I also want to appreciate the Israeli media for not publishing the propaganda and the psychological warfare videos that the enemy is launching via social media and other sources. I'm not taking it for granted. It is most appreciated not to help the enemy in warfare. And I want to thank especially the dear families of hostages for their unbelievable effort here in Israel and worldwide. 24/7, the families are interviewed, are meeting reporters, are traveling worldwide to meet decision makers. They visit any parliament, every government, knock on any door. Just in the last week, there were so many delegations sent by my team alongside with the assistance and help of other ministries of the Israeli government, especially the Israeli Foreign Affairs Ministry and Ministry of Defense, the families' headquarters, and good people that help us to schedule the right meetings and to make sure that this issue, the hostage crisis in Israel, the effort to release our loved ones from the hands and nails of terrorists in Gaza tunnels won't leave the table and won't leave the international schedule every day. It is very important also to ask the media to help us, and it works, to put pressure on decision makers and people that can press on decision makers and mediators and all the people that can be effective in releasing hostages. I can say that there is no doubt that until today the Israeli media did not surrender to the terror theater. And I really hope that it will continue this way. I'd like to thank you very much for being here with us in this important gathering, this important event. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Thank you very much, Dr. Evans. Thank you, all of you, for being here in Israel and helping us, supporting us during this terrible war, during this terrible challenge. Every night, every day, 24/7, since the beginning of the war, even when I close my eyes, for minutes or hours, I see in front of my eyes 136 faces. We have started with many more, but thanks to our efforts, effective efforts, and help and assistance of good people, we brought back to Israel 121 of our hostages. Unfortunately, 11 of them came back not alive, back to grave of Israel. But 110 came back alive, and I want to bring all the hostages back to Israel, safe and sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Gal, for your remarkable remarks. Your task is almost too difficult to bear. We will let you go back to the Kirya, to the Prime Minister meeting, and בשורות טובות, חדשות טובות, good news. I hope we'll have tonight and we remember this event forever. Thank you, Gal. Our host here at the Honorable Foes Museum, together with other people and organizations who care about Israel, have also been working day and night in public diplomacy efforts. For that, we thank you. And so this evening, I'm happy to introduce our host and partner for many years, with a lot of love for Israel, the founder of Foes Museum, Dr. Mike Evans.
Thank you, my dear friend. I'm so grateful for this event tonight. Very, very, very important. The liberal left has convinced the world that the war of terror cannot be won through military action. Appeasement has been the offshoot of self-loathing. Rather than believing that those who wage war against Israel on October 7th are evil, they see Israel as evil for retaliating. This is a very important time that you have had this event, very important time, because we have a problem right now in America. We've had 160 attacks on U.S. forces by Iran and its proxies since October 7th. And we just had another one, the killing of 3 U.S. servicemen on Tower 22 on Sunday, yesterday, January 28th, and at least 34 others who were injured. I just communicated a message, which I'm going to share with you, to President Donald Trump. I had the privilege for 4 years of being part of the team, the evangelical team that worked very closely with President Trump, especially in relating to Israel. I hosted the Embassy Gala. That's the award I gave the president, the Friends of Zion Award. It's been given to 26 world leaders. This evangelical group is the group that put all the initiatives together that happened for the state of Israel. And we're so proud of them. But we hosted the Embassy Gala at the Waldorf for the embassy dedication. And there's no question that Donald Trump was the greatest president, in my opinion, in Israel's history. And so we needed him then, and we need him now. So I have a message for our dear friend who will be the Republican nominee and could very well be the next president of the United States. I'm saying to the president, use your platform and your power to mobilize the Republican Party and the American people in supporting the bombing of the Karg Island. Approximately 90% of Iran's crude oil is deposited on that tiny island. Roughly 2.5 million barrels daily. It's only 8 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. This is very critical. I've written 6 books on this subject and have had the privilege of interviewing more than 50 Iranian leaders, including Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, including the former Iranian ambassador to the United States, and Farah Pahlavi, the wife of the Shah. You have a crisis. October 7th was a preemptive attack upon the state of Israel by its proxy, Hamas. But you have more proxies. Shimon Peres, our chairman, more than 25 years ago said, the new wars of the 21st century will be media wars. There'll be economic wars. There'll be ideological wars, and there'll be proxy wars. So this is much more bigger than just Hamas. You will have Hezbollah. But the dilemma you face and we face concerning Iran is existential. Why would Iran fund this terror attack and time it so significantly? Because by the time of our election in November, Iran will be an atomic state. And Iran will have something in time, short time thereafter, called a nuclear umbrella. Russian planes flying over Iranian airspace. They know this. The state of Israel knows this. So they're trying to exhaust the state of Israel, distract the state of Israel from the biggest, gravest existential threat. In light of a presidential election in which a president needs the progressives, he needs the support of the progressives, like progressive students. So this is an appeal to President Trump, who's maintained astonishing moral clarity, to stand up and speak up in regard of this. America has to respond. They've got to respond to this crisis, but they got to respond strongly. Iran needs to be bankrupted. It needs to be, the cash has to be shut off. The president did it with sanctions, significantly. But right now, Iran has a tremendous free reign. 42 billion they made since that period of time. So this is a message to the president that I've sent moments ago through one of his key people, encouraging. But I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank you for your support, especially, this is critical with the media, that we all unite together and stand behind the state of Israel at this time. God bless you.
וגם את הבולטים.
We have no words to thank you for your generosity and hospitality, for giving us a place like home where we can be with our kids and enjoy. Thank you so, so much.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
We are here today to support these soldiers at war.
Thank you very much to the Friends of Zion Museum for your generous donation.
Thank you, Friends of Zion.
It's a great honor to have you here tonight. God bless you and have a wonderful night.
אני רוצה לומר לכם תודה על מה שאתם עושים, על השליחות שלכם.
After a long time, it's the first time that we smiled. So I want to thank you for all your friendship, all the things that you do for Israel.
Thank you to the Friends of Zion Museum for giving me a home. It really means a lot, so thank you to everyone who has helped make this happen.
I want to thank you so much for all the gifts and for the happy event you did for me. Thank you guys. I love you.
חנוכה שמח, אנחנו כאן בשבילכם, למענכם.
I want to thank the Friends of Zion for their support. It's so important for all of us.
Rosa?
I thank you very much that you remember people who are in hard situation.
We'll make sure you have plenty of medicine and food. God bless you, Rosa. This bomb shelter is the community center for Holocaust survivors, and these are Holocaust survivors that are family. We have loved them, we've cared for them now for over a decade.
My nephew Ophir, here he is. This is Omer, my sunshine.
She was in her base at the 7th of October.
I was with her on the phone 4.5 hours.
הבן שלי איתן חטוף ונמצא עכשיו בעזה. כבר חודש ימים, אנחנו לא יודעים מה מצבו.
You see the terrorists coming, throwing grenades inside, and you see him throwing the grenade outside.
I used to have 6 sons, now I have 5. It's my favorite, unique son. Always was, always will be.
I think the way how you posted exposing this Hamas hypocrisy is amazing.
We are by the Gaza border, and the bombs are flying everywhere. Israel's at war.
They started with the vehicles along the road. They blocked the exits, and then they entered to slaughter and massacre the young men and women.
How many died here?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now we're gonna get inside the shelter where everything happened.
I want to take this opportunity, Mike, and thank you personally and the Friend of Zion for all what you are doing, for supporting us in this difficult time.
I came here to stand, to take a big and strong and firm stand the good versus evil.
We support Israel and we stand for Israel and we are praying for Israel. Hallelujah.
Your coming here today is a divine call. We honor you and we present you with this wonderful award in appreciation for your work, your love, and your support for the State of Israel. We're fighting a media war, and it's a real war that we've got to win together.
President Isaac Herzog, Yitzhak Herzog, is working tirelessly on the diplomatic front to advocate on behalf of the State of Israel. He has kindly taken time to send us his greeting.
Dear members of the foreign media, I want to thank how many of you have done so much to bring to the world the voices of the families of the hostages and the stories of the hostages themselves, to tell the stories of the victims, to shed light on the darkness of October 7th and on the ongoing crisis against our people held in captivity by Hamas. The story of the hostages must be heard time and time again until they are brought home. They are being held in barbaric conditions, in dungeons, without basic medical care, without sufficient food and water, without access to the Red Cross, in crazy situations. Every second they are held in captivity by these Hamas rapists and murderers is another crime against humanity, and every second counts in the race to get them home healthy and free. I know you and your colleagues also focus on the situation of the Palestinians in Gaza. This war has also been forced upon them by Hamas, who use them as human shields and steal the humanitarian aid. I do not shy away from the difficult and painful reality in Gaza, and it is important to hear the voices of innocent people in Gaza. But at the same time, the world, and the media especially, must not swallow the fabrication and falsehood of Hamas. We cannot rely on the libels and lies of terrorists who have no regard to international law, no regard to rules of engagement, no regard for human life. So, dear members of the press, I deeply respect your bravery and dedication in reporting from war arenas, from war situations, from combat and the front line. And whilst I do not pretend to agree with every word of your reporting, I will continue to fight for your right to report freely and safely. Israel will always stand firm for the freedom of speech and press, a core pillar of democracy. We share this commitment to a free press, to the values of democracy, and we also share new challenges together. More people today get news not from professional journalists reporting from the field, but from ill-informed social media influencers posting from their bedrooms thousands of miles away. This is a challenge to Israel, to you, and to the free world entirely. We cannot allow access to accurate reporting to be dependent on an algorithm. We cannot allow the freedom of press to be rationed by likes and shares. Anyone who cares that the truth about this conflict is understood fully must work to be sure that real news overcomes fake news, that truth overcomes lies. I want to thank Nitzan Chen and everyone at the government press officer. They are doing great work, and I thank them every day. I also want to thank the Israel Defense Forces spokesman, General Hagari, and his excellent team. I hope you will all be reporting not on wars in this region, but on the safe return of all the hostages, and ultimately on a future of peace and cooperation between Israel and its neighbors. Thank you all very much.
is working constantly to fight fake news and deliver the facts, whether it's the IDF, the police, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or any other organization. So Richard Hecht is voicing the IDF's achievements and worries in an accessible way to the world and successfully changing conceptions. Richard, the microphone is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Honored guests, I would like to first of all thank Mr. Nitzan Chen and the GPO for inviting me to this very, very important meeting. And of course, Your Excellency, Dr. Mike Evans and the Friends of Zion Heritage Center. Thank you for having me tonight. It's a real honor to be here. I think there's still a, can you hear me okay? Okay. This is a defining moment, as General Hill said, in Israel's history. It began on the morning of October 7th and continues 115 days later. Who can forget the pictures from that fateful morning? The images of Shiri Bibas shielding her two red-headed babies from the hands of Hamas, scorched every Israeli. The clips of young women and men from all around the world at the Nova Music Festival coming under attack from all angles. And the video of the Holocaust survivor and grandmother, Yafa Adal, being driven in a golf cart, ridiculed into the Gaza Strip. To Israel, the Jewish people and our friends, these images will be forever seared in our minds. But this is not the case for the whole world. It's not the case. I deal every day with the media, and people have short memories. From the outset, we knew that in our age of disinformation, fake news, and AI, there would be many actors who would distort what Hamas did on that day and would claim that these events did not happen. It's happening. We also knew that telling the story of what Hamas did on October 7th was key for our unit. It was key for me to cement the international legitimacy for Israel's military response in Gaza. We knew that we'd be where we are now. So we understood the importance of that event. After October 7th, I was thinking, called to witness what happened in Bergen-Belsen. I'm a fan of history. And after seeing the Nazi concentration camps, urgently said to bring the press, to show them, because no one would believe what happened. With this in mind, in the IDF, we opened up Kfar Aza already on the 10th of October, together with the GPO, and it was very complicated. There was a surge of journalists that arrived in Israel, and we said that they had to see it with their own eyes, not with an IDF spokesman talking about it, them walking through Kfar Aza. There were bodies laying on the ground, the stench of death was in the air, and we were in an active war zone. And that day, the journalists had a full picture of the destruction that was wrought upon us on October 7th to the world. On the same day, there was a second Eisenhower moment. To me, as a military man who's been working many years with the American military, of the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Group, later to be joined by the Eisenhower Carrier Group, was a very dramatic moment in the relationship between our two countries. Israel had been attacked in an unprecedented way, and our closest ally and friend immediately understood where we were. I don't know, this isn't, people don't remember, but on the evening of the 7th, Muhammad Def came out of the darkness. He's a sort of mythic Hamas heinous member. And he called the Arab world, listen, the Jews are on their knees. I asked the Arab world to join us in the Al-Aqsa storm. It was a dramatic moment. There was a sense of being overrun. The fact that Americans made that action was dramatic. And the messaging behind that was clear to our other enemies, who considered in maybe joining in, because Hezbollah started firing. It said to them, don't. I would like to really say on behalf of the IDF, to express our condolences to the soldiers that were killed in Jordan, 3 service members in Tower 22. I will join your remarks, Your Excellency. We see them as our brothers in arms. And this tells a story. This is not just a war with the IDF against Hamas. This is a war of good against evil. This is how we see this. This is a regional war. So these 2 defining moments I spoke about demonstrated the power of images in traditional and social media. But we also saw during the beginning of this war how quickly the international media was able to change events in the ground for the worse, not for the good. On October 17th, the world's biggest media outlets rushed to break the news. Hundreds killed in an Israeli airstrike on the Al-Hali hospital in Gaza. It was fury all over social media. People were pouring into the streets all over the capitals, also in the Middle East and also in Europe. President Biden, his visit was put in jeopardy. There was only one problem: it was a false story. But we had to prove it very quickly. With Air Force One wheels up, in the air, we had to move out very quickly to show how this was false. Within hours, we shared radar imagery and footage from all of our operational systems to prove that we did not strike the hospital. Moreover, we provided evidence that it was actually terrorists from Islamic Jihad inside the Gaza Strip that fired a rocket aimed at Israel, which had hit the hospital compound that evening. Having rushed to spread the word based on nothing other than a statement coming from the Hamas health agency, the international media was forced to U-turn, but not after significant damage had been done. These are just 3 moments that I shared with you. Also, the American arrival, also what we did in Kfar Aza, and also this event on the ongoing battle and media battle that we have, and it's a very important battle. Throughout the war, my unit, our unit, the IDF spokesman unit, has been operating to communicate the facts to the world around the clock. We have focused on broadcasting visuals. There's nothing better than visuals of what our soldiers found on the ground in Gaza. Tunnel shafts in school playgrounds, weapons under children's beds, and even now, what you're seeing now on the news, exploitation of United Nations compounds. You're all reading about UNRWA, I assume. And again, we have to take the journalists to show inside Gaza, and it's a challenge because everybody wants to go and see it. A lot of people are not happy with me, but we are doing the best we can to show the world what's happening on the ground inside Gaza. And we've taken people to see the Hamas infrastructure in Shifa, which the New York Times said, no such thing, there's no tunnel. We had to show them the tunnel. Even now, recently in Khan Yunis, a tunnel going under a cemetery, all the way across a mosque. That's how cynical this enemy is. And of course, we had a dilemma with doing that movie, the 47-minute movie, which Mr. Chen and I talked about a lot. It's not something that we do as a Jewish nation, of showing that carnage, but we had to do it. We had to do it. These efforts are not just done by me, but I'm honored to serve with the International Spokesperson Unit. Some of the faces here you probably identify. And again, it's a branch full of wonderful soldiers. We have a massive responsibility. We hold all social networks. You can see the reach and how many people follow our content. And I invite you all to look at our content. And again, all I can say is I'm honored to serve with these soldiers who are powering the machine. The war is not over, but we are very, very determined. I've been on the ground many times, and the IDF is determined to dismantle Hamas. This can never, ever happen to us again. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the word context has become a bit of a catchword after the Ivy League Senate hearing, as the war on the narrative includes who is the victim and who is the aggressor. So what the context is and how it is shown, although to us the answer is crystal clear, Maayan Jaffe Hoffman from the Jerusalem Post will lead a special panel dealing with this issue. Thank you, Maayan, and guests, where are you, please?
Good to meet you.
Because these are 5 very dynamic and very important journalists and thought leaders in the field. First of all, farthest down, we have Elon Levy. He's an Israeli government spokesperson representing Israel on international TV and radio since the start of the October 7th war. He previously served as international media advisor to President Isaac Herzog after a career as a TV news anchor. We have next to him Chris Mitchell. He established the CBN News Middle East Bureau in August 2000, and since then, he's covered the major events in the region, from the Second Intifada, the rise and fall of ISIS, to Israel's current war with Hamas. He told the story of persecuted Christians from the Middle East, and he serves also as executive producer of Jerusalem Dateline. Here we have next to him, this is Alex Gandler. He's the deputy spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel, in charge of the foreign media. In his previous positions, he was posted as the Deputy Consul General of Israel to the southeastern United States and press attaché at the Israeli Embassy in Moscow. Next to him, we have Ashkan Safeh, moved to Israel 14 years ago. He worked for several outlets, including Voice of Israel, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but Tehran, Haifa, Tel Aviv, and Iran Wire. He's been working at as an Iran international TV correspondent in Israel for the last 4.5 years, and he studied Middle East Studies at the University of Haifa. And finally, we have Zach Anders, a freelancer for Fox News and I-24. He's one of the youngest Emmy Award-winning journalists in the country, and he's reported from Ukraine, the earthquakes in Turkey, and now, of course, the current Israel-Hamas war. So I want to start. We don't have a lot of time here with so many panelists, and it's hard to follow such acts as Mike Evans, who was able to give his speech in the video that we saw on the screen. But I think that we need to start out by understanding where each of you were on October 7th. When did you understand, as journalists, as spokespeople, what was actually happening that day? Elon, why don't you start?
7:30 in the morning on a Saturday and Chag, I was of course sleeping.
The sirens didn't start in Tel Aviv until 7:30, so I managed to gloriously sleep through the first hour of the worst moment of our lives. Sirens began, quickly ran into the basement of the building. All the neighbors asking me, is it Hamas, is it Hezbollah? As if, as a former journalist, I should know, and I just woken up myself. And then, like everyone, went upstairs, watched the news as it unfolded in real time. I was not a spokesman, I was a private citizen. And putting on a suit and tie and running to the Kiryat to appear on TV as the government spokesman would come a week later.
Chris.
I too was had gotten up kind of early that morning, and but I actually went back to sleep. And my wife came in. I was in our office. My wife came in and said, "Do you hear those noises?" And it's not uncommon to get air raid sirens in Jerusalem, but not so many, and just kept coming and coming. So then we realized something was extraordinarily different than before. And that day we just started doing. We did 3 shows that day to the next, and then a show almost every day for the next 72 days, and been reporting ever since. But that was the experience, and we just knew in our heart this is different.
I just came back from my tour in the United States. I landed several weeks earlier. I was lying in bed, sleeping. My wife woke me up and said, there's a siren. And I told her, no, it's already Shabbat. You forgot that the sirens in Jerusalem are on Friday. And she said, no, there's a rocket siren. And I woke up, went to the TV, well, looked at my phone first like everyone does, and sent a message to Lior Hayat, the spokesperson for the ministry, and told him, I know I'm not assigned to you yet, but if you need me, I'm there. And he said, get dressed, come in. And I don't really remember the next 2 months, but yeah.
Well, I was probably 200 kilometers away from where it was happening in Haifa at home. I was sleeping. I woke up at around 7:30, 7:40, something like that. I looked at my phone to see what time it is, and I saw I had 100 messages or something like that. I knew something was happening, so I woke my wife up and said, okay, because every Saturday we come to Jerusalem in the evening, and I start working from here. I said, okay, I think we are going to Jerusalem much earlier. I turned on the TV, and it took like a few minutes that I understood that it was different from all the other wars that we had.
So I was supposed to be in London, but I came back to my hometown of Seattle, Washington, because my baseball team was close to making the playoffs. So I was in Seattle, and we have a tremendous time difference. It's 10 hours, 12 hours. So I woke up, and it was already very late in the day here. So the day had already developed. Some of the contacts that I usually work through had already messaged me, so I'm waking up to, same thing, a million messages, and got on the plane and was the last flight in from Istanbul before the airline stopped.
Wow. And on October 7th, I was filling in as managing editor of our website and spent the next 20 hours from 6:30 a.m. until the end of the next day covering the news on Shabbat from my home. So it's been 115 days since the war started. And the Israel-Hamas war does not seem to have an end anywhere in sight. I want to ask the journalists here, Ashkan and Zach, how do you keep it interesting as it keeps going? How do you keep writing and answering questions about a war that just doesn't seem to end?
Well, I mean, the fact that it's not going to end is actually interesting for many people. Something new happens, but people, as other speakers said, actually forgetting what happened on October 7th. So what I do is that every time that I start talking or if I write something, I have to remind them that there are still 136 Israelis in Gaza. Many of them are still alive, but some of them are not alive. And then, it's not only the war in Gaza, it's actually that we expect that something else is going to happen. Something is going to happen in the north. And whether or not and when the hostages are gonna be back in Israel. These things are still interesting, I think, for many people.
Well, one thing is that the story does continue to change. Here's just an example. On Friday, the news was about the International Court of Justice, and then a few hours later, it was UNRWA being defunded, and then it was 3 American servicemen dying and attacked by the Iranian proxies. One thing I think from our particular ministry, organization, is that there's an intense interest in American evangelicals and around the world for what's happening in Israel. So many of them pray, and our Gordon Robertson for CBN is keeping the story alive because of what's the threat it poses to Israel, for the hostages, and for the whole region. So I think for us, it's our number one story, and I will be, I believe, for the foreseeable future, because as Khan said, we anticipate more things to come.
Zach, 1 minute answer.
So the real answer is way over my pay grade, because we just put in the work, and whoever decides what's going to make it onto the evening news is sitting in an office in the States for us. So it's an editorial decision. There's so much news to cover right now. What does feel particularly important in our role, maybe you share a similar observation, is that we are so behind the curve with what is taking place. TikTok, Instagram, establishment media is no longer a power broker. In my lifetime, the amount of content that is going to feed through digitally into the younger generations, they're not the generation that watches the evening news. They're not the generation that reads the news articles, even if they're presented to them in a nice, fun, fashion. So it feels like we're in a battle of our own. And it's not just for attention, but for determining what the future of this media landscape becomes.
And also the future of facts.
Yes.
So Elon and Alex, you are both actually on the other side of this story here. You essentially work for the foreign press. What are some of the most surprising questions that you've received, Elon, so far?
I think everyone knows the most surprising question. But I have many others that shock me. That there is sometimes a perception that I find myself battling against in the foreign media, that somehow we want this war. Somehow Israel wants this war, or is needlessly dragging out, or could click its fingers and make it end. And one of the challenges for me to impress on the foreign media is how much we don't want this war, but how much we nevertheless know that we have to fight this war and we have to win this war, because otherwise there is simply no future for this country in a world in which terrorists like Hamas can perpetrate such atrocities and then get away with it. We know the efforts that the IDF is taking to protect civilians in Gaza, to minimize harm. The civilian to combatant ratio, as heartbreaking as it is, shows very clearly the lengths that the IDF has gone to. And I'll repeat my challenge here to a room full of journalists that I've already made before, with I think 70,000 phone calls and 7 million leaflets and 15 million text messages and 15 million robocalls. I think it's fair to say the IDF has made more warnings for civilians to evacuate a war zone than all armies in the history of warfare put together. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to be fact-checked and have the record set straight. Outrageously, though, we then get told that it is forcible displacement to urge civilians to leave a war zone where a terrorist organization is using them as human shields. So some battles are very difficult to win. But combating that general perception that Israel is either recklessly endangering civilians, or even worse, the absurd blood libel that South Africa is trying to get the International Court of Justice to entertain, that Israel is somehow willfully trying to massacre as many people as possible, when we know, and the facts know, that nothing could be further from the truth.
Thank you. Alex, what about you?
Well, to add to this eloquent answer, it's hard. I've heard a lot of interesting questions directed at me. The hardest ones, or the most absurd ones, probably have to do, again, with the same thing, with Israel's right to defend itself. The subtext to any of those questions is, why do you defend yourselves? Why do you use military power? I don't remember exactly where it was, the great skit about, Eretz Nehederet, the Israeli comedy, where they said maybe we should use e-scooters in order to maybe alleviate the environmental effects. But Israel very clearly is trying to defend itself. It's a defensive war for Israel. Destroying Hamas is a defensive war for us, for the immediate moment and for the future as well. Most of those questions are directed at that. Why are you using the military force? Well, there is no other way.
So we have here on this panel somebody quite interesting, and Askan, I want to go to you because you are reporting right now for what we call Iran International TV. Now, I read about it, and I saw that you're based in London. You operate via satellite, and you're trying to actually reach Iranians, though also in Iran. So I'm wondering, number one, how do you report from Israel? Are you safe? And number two, when people find out that you're from an Iranian TV station, do they want to talk to you?
Well, the answer to the first question is that as long as I'm in Israel, I'm safe. And I don't intend to travel to dangerous countries, Turkey or any other country which has borders with Iran. So as long as I'm in Israel, I'm safe.
Are you like on an Iranian hit list?
I am. I've been even before I started working with Iran International. But for the answer to the second question is that most of the times, yes, they do talk to us, but there have been times that people at first, when we said Iran International, they thought that we were from, from Iran, from inside Iran, from a regime-controlled media, and we had to actually explain to them that it's an opposition TV in London, based in London and DC. And after that, most people, yes, did talk to us, but there have been, there have been times that some people in some cities, no, they said that they don't want to talk to us.
Wow. Now, Chris and Zach, you actually work for outlets that are a little bit different than this Iranian TV. In fact, your outlets, I would say, with Fox and CBN are relatively, or most completely, pro-Israel in most capacities. So tell me about how you're perceived by other colleagues in the foreign press who may have a different feeling about Israel than your outlets do.
Well, I think I'm perceived okay by my colleagues. Nobody is really coming up to me and berating me. But I think we do come from a perspective, I think, that goes back to our founder, Pat Robertson, who always said, he made a vow in 1974, he would always stand with Israel. But I think, the theme of this is victims and aggressor. Covering the wars in Gaza since 2008-9, 2012-14, and 2021. After a while, you get to know, and as well as the Second Lebanon War in 2006, you get an idea of, well, who's the good guys and who's the bad guys? And it seems pretty obvious. And it seems like what we're seeing now is what we have seen before. This movie is the most egregious, the worst, the most horrific. But we've seen scenarios like this time and time again. Hamas will attack. Islamic Jihad will attack. Israel will respond. And they will use their human shields and the people that die, tragically, as propaganda. And it's almost like the same scenario over and over again, the same movie over and over again. And yet, in my perspective, it seems like the foreign media is thinking, I shouldn't say all, but there are some who just seem to play along with what Hamas has done or other terrorist groups or Hezbollah. And you just recognize, well, who's good and who's bad, as if you may be covering World War II.
Zach, what do you think?
Well, and that might play into a bit of a misconception with the public as to when we're journalists, we don't look at each other any different, and we don't. Perhaps our audiences are different. Perhaps our management and management style is different, but we're putting on the big, heavy, silly vests and helmets and look ridiculous together, and we're all out there watching craziness unfold. There's a camaraderie with our colleagues and a brotherhood that it transcends anything that exists before we go into it.
Okay. Now, I want to think about both sides of the story, because the reality is that in foreign media, the Israeli side tends to sometimes be lost, as we talked about. You know, some of the Hamas propaganda machine taking over. Hamas serves up a story, and the foreign media somehow, after each one of these incidents, Chris named some of them, 2008 to 2009, 2014, 2021. Again now, the foreign media, it bites. But on the other side, we're seeing in this war especially, and I think some of our previous speakers spoke about it, that the Israeli media tends not to look so much at the other side of the story. And the reality is that there is a tragedy going on in Gaza, regardless of how careful we are to make sure that we do not murder civilians. And so my question for you, Elon, is this. In an interview, when you're speaking to the foreign press and they ask you, after 115 days of war without any end in sight, and all of these 27,000, according to the Hamas Health Ministry, being killed, how do you defend Israel? Do you just keep throwing up, well, look what happened on October 7th?
No. Look what happened on October 7th, and look at what has been happening every moment since then to the 136 hostages who are still trapped in the Hamas terror dungeons, and we fear are being tortured and starved and raped and executed as we speak. This is an ongoing crisis. It's not that Hamas invaded on October 7th, retreated, and boom, it's over, and Israel has nothing to defend itself against. We're defending ourselves so that Hamas cannot do again and again the atrocities that it has been vowing to repeat, and also because there are 136 people for whom time is running out. Time has already run out for, I believe, 28 of them who have been killed in captivity, of the 132 abducted on October 7th, and we're fighting to put the military pressure to bring them back home. And so there are three things we try to remind the media about all the time. First of all, the atrocities of October 7th. It shocks me sometimes. I go on TV, and the first 10 minutes where I'm waiting to go on air, no one will mention October 7th. It's not that the atrocities gave us legitimacy for a war we wanted. It is the reason we are in this war, because it was the opening act of war. The second is to talk about the hostages, non-stop. We cannot let the world forget about them or abandon them there. And the third is to talk about the way that Hamas has brought ruin and misery on the people of Gaza. With the immense amount of concrete that it poured into the tunnels under Gaza, with the aid that it has been hijacking, with its sick and cynical human shield strategy, the world is right to be outraged and deeply hurt and traumatized by the suffering that is taking place in Gaza. We don't mean to downplay it for a moment, but that suffering has an address. And that address is the brutal terror organization that declared a totally needless war on October 7th and has chosen to wage that war from underneath and behind civilians. It is trying to prevent Israel from evacuating, need I say, with the complicity of UN organizations that have condemned Israel at every turn for its efforts to try to protect civilians.
Okay, well, Alex, I have to know, do people care about these hostages anymore in the foreign press? As Elon mentioned, there are still over 130 hostages in Gaza, but it's been over 115 days. Are you still able to get the story of the hostages out there, or has the story shifted too far away?
Well, we have to be honest. First of all, I have to say that it's not just the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a hub. It's a hub for 108 missions around the world. We monitor the media around the world. It's the big ones, of course, the English-speaking ones we all can read, but it is also the ones that do it in Hindi or Romanian or in Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese. We monitor and we speak to the spokespersons on the ground that are working at the embassies. And we have to be honest, the story has definitely moved to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We can see it very clearly, but we also see a decline within how much this conflict is reported around the world. So there's a small decline, or even a larger than small decline, but also it has shifted from the 136 hostages. What it means for us is that we need to take note and we need to work harder in order to bring these stories forward. I can tell you that next week I'm going to Geneva with 36 families of hostages to present their stories both to the media. That's my role. That's why I'm going as the spokesperson. They're also meeting with members of local government and the UN and so on. The story has to stay alive for us. We have to keep monitoring the trends of what is happening, where the story is shifting to. ICJ, UNRWA, currently, maybe the tunnel under the cemetery will gain traction. It's a newer story, but we have to bring in, and we have to say exactly like, I have to compliment Elon, exactly as you said, it is the story. For us, this is the story. This is the story for Israel. It's not only Hamas. It's firstly 136 human beings being held by them.
And it's also UNRWA who is holding some of them. So, you know, it's interesting, Elon, and I want to go back to you. We now know 100% bivadaut that at least 12 UNRWA employees, if not more, were involved directly in October 7th. 99% of UNRWA staff are Gazans, and the majority of Gazans, according to their own polls, according to polls taken by Palestinians, are supportive of Hamas, and they are supportive of the massacre that occurred on October 7th. Number one, why is UNRWA still operating in Jerusalem? Why has Israel not kicked it out? And did UNRWA give Hamas some of the information that it needed to be able to carry out that attack on October 7th?
I think we're seeing a policy shift in recent days from the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, the Defense Minister, who are all taking a much more hawkish stance towards UNRWA and making it clear that it has no role in a post-war Gaza. As for the question regarding their involvement in the massacre, we now know that at least a dozen UNRWA members were directly involved in the massacre. According to that excellent scoop in the Wall Street Journal, we know about 10% of UNRWA staff in Gaza are directly implicated with terrorist groups. But the question goes much deeper than that, and I'll be blunt. UNRWA is a Hamas front organization. UNRWA is the organization that Hamas uses to launder information and propaganda for global consumption, and some in the international media fall for it. I'll give you one of the most shocking examples. Just on Friday, we saw the theater of the absurd at the ICJ, where in order to support some of the provisions, the court quoted, uncritically, UNRWA, the same organization that has been covering up for Hamas, knowingly and willingly. Just my favorite example, October 16th, UNRWA put out a tweet saying that people purporting to be from the Gaza Ministry of Health, that's Hamas, came and stole fuel and medical supplies from their compounds. They then deleted the tweet and put out a clarification denying reports on social media, their own tweets. UNRWA covers up for Hamas. UNRWA is the mechanism through which Hamas takes information, puts a UN stamp on it, and then sends it out to the international community. And then I get asked interviews saying, the UN says. The UN being Mr. Lazzarini, okay? Who people with less diplomatic niceties than would be wise for me to use would call a liar. Consistently covering up and being complicit with Hamas. Tomorrow at 3:30, I will be giving our daily press briefing from the Prime Minister's office. I hope that you're all following the press briefings that we've been doing, collaboration between the GPO and the National Public Diplomacy Directorate under Moshe Kaviv. I think it's become one of the most important institutions in Israeli Hasbara. Every day an opportunity for foreign media to ask questions. And tomorrow I will be dedicating the briefing to laying out the evidence of UNRWA's complicity with Hamas. You'll excuse me, therefore, that I can't stay for the whole event. I have an all-nighter to pull. So we can meet at 3:30 tomorrow and show you how Hamas uses UNRWA to launder information for global consumption. And now that we are beginning to learn about the depth of the rot within that organization and its members' active involvement with Hamas, we can begin to hold these organizations to account, even if they have the letters U and N on their letterhead.
Thank you. So we're going to have to get ready to conclude the panel, and to do that, I actually want to get a little bit personal. You know, I've been down south many times myself as a journalist. I've been to Abu Kabir, I've seen the movie, And I have to admit that it has really changed me and something has shifted inside since this war started. I want to ask the three journalists on the stage, final remarks. How do you get up every day and report on this tragedy? Chris, you start.
First of all, I want to shout out to David Bedeen here in the front row, who has been sounding the alarm on UNRWA for many, many, many years. So I just want to congratulate David for being a voice in the wilderness for many years. The way we handle things, I guess, personally, is we pray. We pray in the morning. We usually pray for the IDF soldiers, for the hostages, their families, for the innocents in Gaza. And dealing with the issues and like watching the raw footage from October 7th, I don't think we get inured by it, but we take things from it. And personally, what happened to me when I first watched it on the way home back to Jerusalem was I just felt something in my heart. It said, honor them. Honor the men and the women, the children that died that day so horrifically, so wrongly. And so that we could, in our reporting, help support the people, the family members that are here, the hostages. And I think that if there's anything that helps us through this personally, to go through the kind of reporting that we have to do as a CBN News staff, is to pray, because we are fighting a battle of good and evil. This is what you said, Mike, and so many others, and Richard. This is really a battle of good and evil. And to do that, it's not just a journalist thing, it's a spiritual thing, and we need to arm ourselves. That's why we reported just several weeks ago about the Kotel prayer meeting, and I think prayer is going to be one of the things, I think, that will help us all through this time.
Thank you. Askan.
Well, I have not watched the movie. I refuse to watch it. But I've been to the Gaza envelope, kibbutzim, and everything there, everywhere there. I still have the smell. I can still feel the smell from the bodies and everything. How do I deal with it? It's almost now 4 months. For the last 4 months, I buried myself under work. I have been working 24/7 without even one day off, every day for 10 to 12 hours. And I get so tired at night that I feel asleep. I can tell you that every time that a war broke out in Israel, after the war, and even during the war, I had PTSD for a few days from the sirens and the booms, the explosions and everything. This time I haven't had it yet because I've been buried under work.
Wow. Zach?
Well, he hit the nail on the head. You just keep working and you try and outrun before it catches up to you. You take a day off like today and the exhaustion hits, the feelings, the memories, they all hit very hard. What's my strength right now is understanding that I'm still very young, 27. I feel like I'm going to have a very long career and a long runway in this industry that's facing existential threats. That if the freedom of information, if free speech is the pillar or the foundation of our democracy, it is under attack from every angle. It is crumbling, it is sinking. And we right now are combating, we don't even know what our enemy is. The TikTok algorithm, does anyone know how that formula is accounted for? How the Chinese government decides who gets to see what and when? We are so far beyond the curve, and we don't know what comes next, but I can tell you that it is scary. The artificial intelligence that will enter into this arena, you're going to see a video of me someday, and it's not going to be me. And I'm going to tell you something, and it's not going to be the truth. That is what we're fighting against. It is scary, and we need to do something. Our states need to take action. There needs to be a digital Bill of Rights. We got to do something.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you all so much for participating in the panel.
כוח. We will now take a short break with Ariel Cohen, who will sing 2 songs for us. Then we will have the other panel. Where are you, Ariel?
I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the 4, the 5th, the minor fall, the major lead, the baffled king composing hallelujah. הללו ברכי עוזו, הללו בין טוב ומחור, הללו כרוב גודלו, הללו במינים ועוגר, הללו בצלצלי שמיים, הללויה. Sing with me. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. בעזרת השם שישובו כל החטופים הביתה. Bring them back, בעזרת השם. ריח הכבוד עוד באוויר, עם עייף חובש פצעיו, יושב סופר ימיו, צעקות בושה בכל העיר, דור רוצה תשובה עכשיו, זכאי ולא חייב, בגוף עייף מכישלונות, בלב שבור לחתיכות, נחכה לך שתקבל פנינו, לך קראנו בלילות ועוד נצעק ברחובות, רחם עלינו אבא, הושיענו, הושיענו. זמן עובר כולם ממהרים, דור מחיש את פעמיו, רוצה הכל עכשיו, שמש בשמיים אפורים, עם בארץ אבותיו, נלחמו על חייו, בגוף עייף מכישלונות, בלב שבור לחתיכות, נחכה לך שתקבל פנינו, לך קראנו בלילות ועוד נצעק מחכה לנו אבא הושיענו, הושיענו. בגוף עייף מכישלונות, בלב שבור לחתיכות, נחכה לך שתקבל פנינו. לך קראנו בלילות ועוד נצעק ברחובות, רחם עלינו אבא הושיענו, תודה רבה, thank you.
Okay, so please have a seat. We are on live for at least 7 or 8 channels. Please take your seats. We would like to start with the very important panel. We are a nation at war. At the very epicenter of that war is this totally heartbreaking situation of the hostages and their families. And we are still reeling from the events of October 7th. Israel is such a small country. You did not have to go further than 2 or 3 people in your circle, or friends or people you know, to find a connection to the terrible events of that day. Before we start the next panel with the families of the hostages, I would like to present Liat Sommer. She is the head of the international media team of the Hostages and Families Forum. Liat, where are you?
Thank you, Nitzan Chen and Tal Marom and Susie for having me here tonight. So, good evening, everyone. It's hard to say good evening those days, isn't it? For almost 4 months, I've been meeting you in a press conference and in interviews with the families. And I never asked you, do you remember where were you on October 7th? Because I remember exactly watching TV, and I couldn't believe 20 years of experience as a journalist couldn't prepare me for this devastating event. The next day, I left my job, my husband and my kids, and came to the Hostages Families Forum. Me and my team at the International Media Desk volunteer around the clock to give those precious families an international platform to demand, bring them home now and alive. After 115 days, we understand that the global pressure and the cooperation with you guys, the international media, was huge factor in bringing home some of the hostages from Hamas captivity. 136 hostages are still waiting for us to do everything we can to bring them home from Hamas tunnels. I want to use this opportunity to thank you, the journalists, who are covering the hostages and do so in sensitive and in a fair way. I want to believe that you also understand that what happens here could happen everywhere. This week, we mark the International Holocaust Day. As a third-generation Holocaust survivor, I'm here to say, never again is now. I want to thank the families who are giving us the trust every day. You already know you've become like my second family. I hope in my next speech to welcome all the hostages back home, children, women, and men. Thank you.
Thank you, Liat, for the wonderful job that you are doing. It is inconceivable to understand what these families are going through, and so with a real feeling of humility that I would like to thank the families for coming to talk to us tonight. And Joel Rosenberg will now lead the panel. Joel, where are you? Please.
Good evening. It's an honor to be with you all. I want to thank Nitzan Chen from the Government Press Office, obviously the Friends of Zion Museum and the whole team, Mike and the others for hosting it here. I think it's important not only to be briefing the foreign media, but it's an interesting environment to be in because evangelical Christians love Israel and the Jewish people, and I don't think, well, as to quote our Prime Minister, there is no greater friend to the people of Israel and the Jewish people than evangelical Christians. We're not the only friends, but I think we're among the best and most faithful. And so this is, I think, maybe the most important part. I think the most important part, if you'll allow me, is to have this conversation now with hostage families as well as those who've, a father whose son has given his life in this war. And so let me bring them up one by one. First, Yoni Asher. Why don't you guys just come up all together? Yoni Asher, Sigi Cohen. Yeah, please give them Malki Shemtov. Ofli Bibas. Good to meet you. Thank you so much. Please, sorry. So thank you. And Gidon Bayer, thank you. And we will have translation. Yes. My Hebrew's not good enough. Look, this is a difficult panel to have, right? Each person deserves an entire program just about them and their family and their situations. And but we want to give you as foreign journalists an opportunity that you may not have had, at least to meet these five and hear a little bit of their stories. And I hope it will inspire you to do what I want to do. If you will allow me, I'm inviting you to come on and do more media with Christian media. I'll come to your home. We'll bring the crew. I know you're exhausted by all this, but I know it also gives you purpose to tell the story. Otherwise, you're just going to, I know I'm talking to a number of you, you feel like, well what can I do? I want to start as we begin just some context. So I'm an evangelical Israeli, and I get enormously frustrated by media bias, but I decided a number of years ago I was either going to have an aneurysm by being angry every single moment of every single day. Not that you're all guilty of bad coverage, I'm not saying that, but there's enough out there that it's enormously difficult. And this is a moment that requires really good journalism. So I started with my colleagues, two daily news sites, digital news sites, all Israel news, and all Arab news. And it's the only Israeli-based evangelical news sites with daily coverage by Israeli citizens. But that being said, then TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network, is the most watched Christian network in the world, 14 networks worldwide. But they had never really done news. And so as they tracked what we were doing with All Israel News, they asked us to do a news show. Now, CBN is the par excellence Christian news network in the world, and certainly here in Israel. And so TBN has had a lot to catch up with. But on that basis, I want you to know that your stories are important to Christian media. And if other media get tired or so biased that they don't want to pay attention, you will always have a friend in the Christian media, and there's not just one outlet, there's many. Tell us your stories, because Christians want to hear it more than anybody in the world. And there's enough millions of us, we can affect change. Okay, so let's begin. Yoni, I want to begin with you, Yoni Asher, because you're unique in this particular panel in that you suffered the horrors of October 7th with your family, but your family has been released. Would you just take a few minutes and share what happened for your family on that day, and how are they doing? What are they saying now that they're out? And I will say one other thing. I'm not sure this panel is going to work like the other one. I think we need to have each conversation one by one. There may be time for a few other questions, but to go back and forth is difficult because it breaks up your narrative of being able to tell your personal story. So, Yoni, if we can start with you, October 7th, and then the miracle.
First of all, thank you, and thank you for hosting us here tonight. Like you said, my wife and two young daughters, Raz and Aviv, which are only 5 and 3 years old, from this January, were taken hostage on October 7th, and on November 24, they got back on the first deal at the first time. And the fact that I'm sitting here with parents and brothers of people that are still there is very difficult to me. On October 7th, my wife and two daughters were visiting their grandmother in Kibbutz Nir Oz. We are living in the Sharon area, which is in the center of Israel, and I wasn't with them. My wife went out without me, and they spent the night. And at the morning, when the alarms started, and my wife and I talked on the phone and on WhatsApp, and around 10 we got disconnected. I couldn't reach her anymore, and things started to get harder and harder. As I watched the news, I saw the horrific massacre increasing and the number of casualties increasing. And I knew that this is not the usual, as much as you can say, usual situation. And I couldn't reach her. Like I said, I talked with hundreds of security people, with hundreds of reporters, foreign and locals, all during that several hours. And I even managed to locate her mobile phone using her Gmail account, which was open on my laptop, and it appeared in Khan Yunis. So I didn't know at that time if the phone is there without my family and whether it's real kidnapping. But as time went by, and as I saw that I can't manage to get someone there to rescue them, and there is no one who can get there, not the army or not the police, not anyone, I went on to the media and spoke on the news and gave my phone number on the news and gave their photos and gave their details. After, I think it was 5 p.m., Hamas released a video using TikTok. That video got to me, and on that video I witnessed my wife, my older daughter Raz, my young daughter Aviv getting kidnapped on a tractor with a cart, and Hamas.
What was your reaction at that moment? I can't even imagine, but can you articulate that?
Well, seeing your family getting taken by Hamas terrorists, screaming Allahu Akbar all around, after all those hours, which you are hoping they will somehow be rescued. I told you that earlier. It can't be described in words, unfortunately. This option does not exist. I can only say that literally all the energy ran out of my body that moment, and it's a moment that transcends space and time and above all logic. And I had to really quick recover, because I understand that I am the only one that can fight for them, because they were kidnapped along with their grandmother, my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law, Gadi Moses, who is still there. He's not blood related because he's my mother-in-law's spouse for 20 years, but my daughters called him grandpa. So for us, it's another family member that is still there.
Then your mother-in-law was then you found out.
Yeah, about 10 days later, we got announced that my mother-in-law was killed during the abduction in a shooting incident. My wife was injured in that incident, and she had splashes of shooting, splitting of shooting in her back. She lost a lot of blood. During the captivity, she was stitched with no substance in front of my daughter's eyes. She managed to keep them together even though there was immediate danger that they will be separated. At some point, one of the Hamas terrorists took my older daughter Raz on his hands and started walking, while my wife and the other hostages on that cart. And for a few moments, she thought that she lost her for good. And afterwards, in very much lucky situation, one of the hostages saw that terrorist walk in with Raz, my older daughter, on his hands, and they were shouting at him, "Give us the girl, give us the girl." And while they are driving, she almost fell from my wife's hands, but he some kind of threw her. And from that moment on, they were together. And for 49 days, my hero wife, injured, scared to death, transferred one time in the middle of the night, fearing they will be lynched, kept them together and managed to give them the feeling that the people who are holding them is not the evil person that kidnapped them.
I wish we had all night, but I want you to take us now to their, at least in this group, they're the group, part of the group that came out. They were released. What can you tell us about what they're telling you, what they experienced, how they're doing? I know some of that is private. I respect that, but what can you help us understand? Because so few people have met a dad whose wife and daughter have been released.
Well, it's you need to separate between the little girls to my wife, because the little girls have no idea what Gaza is, what hostages means, what war means. They don't know these words. They have their own language. They know that evil people took them with guns. They saw it. You can't deny it. So there are difficulties. We are dealing with some nights that includes waking up. Sometimes they are overreacting. And my wife, after losing her mother and her brother, who also got killed on that morning, is only now have the time to mourn her relatives, because during that time in captivity she had no time. She was automatically functioning, and it's very difficult. It's each day for us. It's October 7th. For each one of us, me and my wife, it's different, but we are remembering all the time, and I have flashbacks all the time from October 7th, from the 49 days, and my wife as well. So the coping is not simple, but like I said, as long as there are still people there, this is a rich man's problem.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Sigalit Cohen, Siggy, we've not met before, but and you don't have to keep looking back at me, but would you talk about Eliah, talk about who he is, talk about what you're going through, what you know at this point?
Eliah is 26 years old, very handsome man, you can see.
seen the photos.
He's a marketing person. He loves lives. He loves to dance. He traveled all over the world with a lot of friends. He's the stick of the friends. Everyone want to be near him because he's very warm man. He have a big heart.
A very loyal girlfriend, Ziv. They were together at the
Yes.
music festival.
Yes, they go to the music festival, and at 6:30 they heard the alarms, and they run away from the party, from the Nova party. They go to shelter in Kibbutz Ra'im, and they wait there for help. And after in an hour, they heard two vans with loud music, Arabic music. The terrorists came to this shelter, and they came in and started to throw a RPG and live fire and wounded. And then in this shelter, small shelter, was 29 people, and most of them were murdered. Some of the bodies that killed there are felt on Ziv, the girlfriend of Elia, and she was under those bodies for more than 3 hours, not moving. Her face was on the ground, and she just looked like she's dead. And Elia was wounded, injured by a bullet.
In his leg, is that correct? In his leg?
In his leg, yes. He felt on the bodies, and then the terrorists came and took him to the van. And we have a picture from Gaza that said Israeli prison is in Gaza.
Ziv survived, and I've seen her on television programs, including I think in London, at least. So she's telling the story, you're telling the story. How are you doing? How is she doing? And is there anything that you know? Has there been any reports from intelligence or anything that gives you a sense of Eliah's status?
From this day?
Yeah, well, since then. 115 days now. How are you doing? We'll start there.
It's a nightmare. I don't sleep at all. I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping. I'm trying to do everything to know where is Eliah, what happened to him. Nobody see him. I interview everywhere that I can do. That everyone in all over the world will know this story and the story of 135 more hostages. And it's very, very, very difficult. We have no breath. It's very hard. It's very hard to unknown nothing about him and nothing about the other hostages.
And Ziv, how is Ziv doing?
Ziv, she's now trying to be strong because she wants Eliah will come back. Sure. She's waiting for him, and she do everything that he will come back. She also have a nephew that murdered near to her. So it's very difficult for her. And she saw everything.
Saw it now happen.
Yes, she saw everything from this shelter. So it's very hard. But she said to me, I'm now strong until Eliah will come back, and then we fell up together.
Thank you. Malki Shem Tov, you and I had the honor of meeting you and your wife Shelley, who is here. Hi. At the hostage village sort of headquarters when I brought the evangelical Christian delegation, Governor Huckabee and the others. Would you talk about Omer? And he's not just a hostage. He's got a unique set of medical challenges that make this significantly worse than even everybody else, as bad as it all is, right? So can you talk a little bit about him, who he is, but also his medical conditions?
Yes, I will speak about Omer. But first I want to ask the audience, do you know where is your son now? Do you know where is your daughter now? Do you know if they are eating? Do you know if it's cold? I didn't speak, me or my wife or my family, with Omer more than 150 days. So I guess you can imagine what is the feeling of parents that he didn't speak with his son more than 150 days. And not only speaking, not knowing, like in the dark. Omer is a young boy. He just went to the most wrong festival. And he just started his life. You know, tons of friends.
21, right?
21. Just starting his life, as I say. Young, party guy. Tons of friends. Working as a waiter in a restaurant and thinking about the next party and the next good time with his friends. And he went, as I say, to the most wrong festival. Omer was on the Nova Festival, and from 6:30 until 8:30, we've been in contact with him. We spoke with him many times. He was running away. He tried to find a shelter. He tried to find a place where to hide. And from time to time, for a call, another call, he sounded much more panic, much more hysteric.
He was able to reach a car, though, with a friend, right?
He came with friends, but some of the friends just, I mean, the split.
Yeah.
And one of the phone calls, he told us that he has another two friends, they found a car of a friend that he was already out of the area. And he was calling them and he told them that he's coming to take them. And he came to take them. And we asked Omer to send us a live location. And we saw the point on the screen of the phone. And we saw the beginning that the point is not really moving. And then suddenly we saw the point going very fast toward to the border of Gaza. And I tried to call him to tell him you're on the wrong way. I didn't realize that this is the situation. And I called him, but he never answered. And the next thing it was that the point was behind the border. And I guess, as I say before, you don't know nothing about your kid. So in that moment, it's like I felt someone throw on my face a huge, thick black curtain. And you say, wow, what I'm going to do. And Omer he was there with his friend. I will skip about details, but I will tell that he was with Itai 52 days. And we know from Itai all kind of stories. Omer is suffering from asthma, so he didn't have his inhaler. So it was really tough for him to breathe. And also they need to be in silent, so they were whispering all the time. So I can imagine how difficult it was for him just not to breathe, and also he cannot even cough, so he need to whisper. And Omar was also celiac, so he cannot eat bread and what they give them over there, pita, labane, and bread. So he's eating what he's eating, his stomach itself. So we don't know nothing anymore after these 52 days that they've been together, and it's completely unknown.
Thank you for sharing. When we met with you and Shelley was sharing about how she goes into his room every day just to pray, God, please, we need a miracle.
Yes, we left the light and the fan in his room, and the room is still like he left it. And Shelley keeps telling, when he will come, he will fix his room. So we are waiting for him to fix the room.
Okay.
And we miss him so much.
Yeah.
And Bezrat Hashem, he will come back.
Amen. Thank you for sharing. Ofli, Bibis, your family may be the most famous of, but there are many. But one of the things I think is important is that each of these families, every story needs to be told. Every story needs to be known. But yours is probably the most famous, or among them, because you're the aunt of two of the youngest hostages and the youngest in Kfir, these two beautiful red-headed children. Would you talk about your sister, your brother-in-law, these kids? What have you gone through? And I just want to give you an open-ended question there.
Just to be correct, I'm Yarden's sister.
Sorry, thank you.
Shiri's sister-in-law and Kfir and Ariel's aunt. My family unfortunately has become maybe the most famous hostage from October 7th. Shiri's horrible picture being taken with the boys was one of the first picture published, I think. It was published as a picture, and maybe 2 hours later a video. When it was published about 2 hours after my brother sent me the last text. I was texting him while he was in the safe room. He told me they were inside with the kids. They were trying to keep them quiet, which was a hard thing to do because it was a 4 years old and a baby. He told me he can hear gunshots and screaming in Arabic, and he was terrified. He was ready with his gun. We later learned from hostage who was released that spent time with him that at some point he said goodbye to Shiri and the boys. He left them in the safe room and he went outside to try and fight the terrorist. Eventually going with them, thinking this way he will save his family. He couldn't believe, I think, like neither of us, that they will kidnap a baby and a 4 years old. For 3 days we didn't know what happened to my brother. And on the 10th of October, which was his birthday, a picture of him popped in an Arab news site, and we saw that he was taken as well, injured in his head. Up till now, we know nothing about Shiri and the boys, apart from what Hamas published of them being killed from an Israeli bombing. It was published almost, I think, two months ago now, at the last day of the deal. And up till now, we don't know anything about their faith. None of the hostages being released has seen them at no point. And Yarden, we know he's been held in some kind of cage underground in a tunnel, complete darkness for days, just him and one more hostage. We know he suffered a lot because he was really worried about his family. He didn't know they were kidnapped. And we are talking about media, and I think what is unfortunately unique about this situation is that we as family discover almost everything we discover so far was through media. It's always one step before the intelligence can even come and tell us. So through the telegram, we saw my brother video when Hamas filmed him while telling him that his family was killed, picturing him grieving and mourning and asking for the Israeli government to bring them back. And this is the last evidence I have from my brother, which left us really concerned, because I don't know how can anyone in a normal situation cope with this kind of information, and he has to cope after 50 days of being hostage and still hostage, away from us, from his family, not knowing if it's true. And I think we all share the same feeling that the most difficult is just not knowing. Not knowing where they are, not knowing their condition, not knowing where they're coming back, not knowing how can we help, what can we do. We've been traveling all over the world, talking, delegations and media, and just trying to be their voice.
Well, I want to thank you for that. Each of you have been so courageous, and I mean, I guess it's the mission, but and you've been so faithful at it, each of you, and it's been very powerful. And I hope that you could, will continue until we get them all back. I do need to shift because now we're going to talk to an Israeli whose son was fighting to get your loved ones home. And unfortunately, he gave his life for this country. Not Jewish, Gidon Bayer. Your family is an extraordinary family, and I know English is not your main language, and neither is German or Hebrew for me. So I have 4 sons. They all know Hebrew. I'm still the immigrant father that's not doing so well with that. So we're going to need some translation from Susie from GPO, but I do want to say, you're from a German family. Your family before you came out of, not that they were involved in the Holocaust, but out of wanting to, you've said, and your family said, to atone for German atrocities. And so how can we help Israel and the Jewish people? And for your son, who didn't have to serve, or at least didn't have to serve in combat, to not only serve in combat, but serve in a special forces unit, Maglan. Would you tell us about Yulia and why he loves this country? Why do you love this country? Because your story became a big story when he was killed in combat, because most Israelis were like, wait a minute, a German evangelical family is fighting for us? Like, that's a big story. Thank you. Thank you very much.
אני אדבר בעברית. שיפרתי היום קצת את האנגלית שלי. המשפחה שלנו, הורים שלי הגיעו בשנת 72 לארץ.
My family, my parents came to Israel in 1972.
הם באו מתוך אהבה לישראל, ואהבה לישראל זה מתוך אהבה לאלוהי ישראל.
They came here out of a great love to God, to the God of Israel and to Israel, the country of Israel.
ההורים שלי ניהלו בית הבראה לניצולי שואה בשבי ציון.
My parents conducted rehabilitation center in Shavei Zion.
ובנו מאוחר יותר בית חולים סיעודי לניצולי שואה במעלות.
And later on they created a hospital to help people, survivors of the Holocaust, to be treated there.
ולתוך זה אני גדלתי.
I grew up into that reality.
שני המקומות מתופעלים על ידי גרמנים נוצרים מאמינים שבאים לעבוד שנה פלוס.
The place was conducted by German people who came to volunteer there for a period of time for more than a year or so.
ושם גם הגיעה אשתי.
And my wife also came there.
והכרנו והתחתנו.
And that's where we met and we got married.
והקמנו את המשפחה שלנו במעלות ויש לנו 5 ילדים.
And then we brought up a family together and we had 5 children together in Ma'alot.
שהילדים שלנו גדלו במעלות וחוו גם את מלחמת לבנון השנייה.
Our children grew up in Ma'alot and they saw also the Second Lebanon War.
שישבנו 5 שבועות במקלט והפגיזו אותנו.
For 5 weeks we were sitting in the shelter while being bombed.
ושהגיע הזמן ללכת לצבא, אז הבת שלנו, יש לנו 2 בנות גדולות, אחת מהבנות, היא אמרה שבזמן מלחמת לבנון השנייה, חיילים נלחמו בשבילה, שהיא עכשיו רוצה לתת גם את החלק שלה, וזה לא היה שאלה בשבילה.
We have 2 daughters, and when it was time to recruit to the army, my daughter said that during the Second Lebanon War, soldiers, Israeli soldiers, were fighting to keep them safe. So now it was her turn to do that, to do the same. It was not even a question.
וככה 2 הבנות התגייסו, 2 היו בקרבי.
So they both recruited and went to the army and served in special units.
ואחרי זה גם 2 הבנים.
And after that also our 2 boys.
שאוריה גם היה ברור לו שהוא התגייס והוא התגייס לצנחנים.
And then after that Uriah also it was clear to him that he would recruit to the army and he recruited to the parachuting unit.
ובמיון שהיה בצנחנים בחרו אותו ליחידת מגלן.
And he was chosen to the special unit Malan.
ב7 לאוקטובר הוא היה הראשון שהקפיצו ב6:30 בבוקר.
On October 7th he was the first one who has been called for duty early in the morning.
ואחרי זה את הבן השני ואת 2 הבנות.
And soon after that our second son was called and also our daughters.
אוריה וצוריאל הם נלחמו בכפר עזה ובבארי.
Uriah and Suriel were combating in Be'eri and Kfar Aza.
והיה להם מאוד ברור מה קרה שם ולמה יש את המלחמה הזאתי.
It was very clear to them what was happening and why this war was starting.
צוריאל אמר לי בצורה מפורשת, אנחנו נלחמים בשליחים של השטן.
Suriel told us specifically that they were at war with the devil's people.
חסרה מילה באנגלית. אחרי זה התחילה המלחמה בתוך רצועת עזה, שגם לשם אוריה נכנס, בהתחלה לצפון הרצועה, אחרי זה גם לדרום הרצועה.
Soon after that, Uriah went into Gaza. First, he went to the northern border of the Gaza Strip, and soon after that, to south of Gaza.
בדרום הרצועה, שם הוא נפצע קשה, הוא קיבל כדור לראש.
And then he was badly hurt, and he was wounded, was shot in the head.
ו4 ימים אחרי זה הוא נפטר.
4 days after, he passed away.
Well, I want to thank you for your service to the country. I've been to the elderly nursing home in Haifa. My wife and I have visited there, even contributed financially to help there. And your love for this country is just extraordinary. And your whole family service. I want to say thank you. We do. You want to make a closing thing, and then I want to go to each one of you and just anything you want to say to the foreign media, to the government. I just want to give you all the final word. But Gidon, would you want to begin?
אם אתה רוצה לומר כמה מילים, בין אם זה לציבור, לקהל, לממשלה, כמה מילות סיכום.
לא, אנחנו עשינו בגרמניה גם שבעה.
We did have a shiva also in Germany.
ושם עלתה כל הזמן השאלה, מה שעלתה גם פה, למה הוא התגייס?
And the question that kept on rising was, why did he recruit?
הוא יכול היה להתחמק.
He didn't have to do that. He could have gone away with it.
ואנחנו אנשים מאמינים באלוהים.
We believe in God.
ואנחנו משוכנעים מי שאוהב את אלוהים, אוהב גם את עם ישראל.
We are convinced that those who love God love also Israel.
ואז אמרתי להם שכמו שעושים בישראל, עונים על שאלה בשאלה.
And then I said that as Israelis do, we have to answer a question with a question.
ושאלתי אותם עד לאן מגיעה האהבה שלכם לעם ישראל.
And then I asked him, where does your love for Israel, what does it reach?
אני לא מבקש שכולם יתגייסו לצבא או משהו, אבל אני חושב שכן אפשר לשאול את השאלה, במיוחד בתור אנשים נוצרים מאמינים, עד לאיפה מגיעה האהבה שלי לעם ישראל.
I don't think that everybody has to recruit to Tzahal, but I do believe that this question should be asked. To where does your love to Israel reach?
לאוריה לא היה גבול.
Uriah didn't have any boundaries about this question.
Gideon, I just want to say, I know where your faith comes from. I think of the words of Jesus, of Yeshua, who said, a man has no greater love than to lay down his life for his friends. And as a fellow follower of Yeshua, I look forward to meeting you out in heaven one day. But in the meantime, we keep fighting. So thank you very much.
תודה רבה.
Malki.
Well, I will say that it's become the mission of our life, the mission of all my family, in order to do everything to bring back Omer and all the other hostages. And we really do everything. Even if we will need to go to the moon and put a huge sign, bring them home.
My wife, a few days after she got back, had an infection. The doctors specifically said, if you wouldn't get back, you were died over there. The amount of antibiotics that they gave to her was not available in Gaza. So definitely she would died. And that stressed the importance of those people who are sitting here and the people who are there. Each minute is critical. There is no time to negotiate like a regular negotiation. There is no time for analyzing the people, the media, the governments, the leaders needs to understand that each minute is critical, because a few more days and my wife would not got back.
I just want to say that our fight as families is unfortunately still not done, and our fight, the fight of the Israeli government is against Hamas is not done, and we need the local media and the international media to keep the subject alive, to keep it on the news, to keep advocating for Israel, for her right to fight, and for the urgency of bringing the hostages back. I think it's part of the pressure we're trying to put on all the governments and on Hamas, and everybody is involved in the negotiation to end this situation. Because, like Yoni said, it's clearly that the hostages doesn't have any time to spare. They can die every minute. So it's important that we'll have the media with us in our battle. It's a crucial part of our battle.
Thank you. Ziggy?
As Yoni says, the hostages don't have any time. My son is wounded, and every day that he's still there and I don't know what happened with him, and I don't know if he get a care medical or something else. It's very dangerous for him and for the other hostages. And I ask you to be ambassadors in all over your world, and speak and tell our stories in your countries, that whole world will know what the hostages have been through there, and help us to press everywhere that you can do to bring them home now. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. I just want to close with this thought. Trying to stay hopeful 115 days with no end in sight is very hard to do. And I will just say that for me, I look to the Tanakh, the New Testament also, but in this case, the story of David, before he was king, he and his mighty men were living on the border of Gaza and Israel in a town called Ziklag. They were out fighting bad guys. When they came home, their whole town had been burned to the ground. Every person in the town that wasn't a fighter, they were all taken hostage. And the text says that they wept until they had no more strength to weep. But then it says that David strengthened himself in the Lord. And then, it doesn't say how, but he says he strengthened himself in the Lord. He spent time with the Lord. He prayed. He remembered scriptures. And then he asked the Lord, should I go pursue them? And in other words, is it hopeless, or should I go try to fight and get these? And the Lord said, go get them. And they went, and it's a great success story in the Bible. It's not a story that we think of much. It's not one of the big stories of David. He did so many other things, but they fought, they beat the Amalekites, and they got every single person home. We cannot give up. And any media that's just doing it just because, cover both sides, listen, it's not my job to instruct you. But those of us who believe there is a right and wrong here, we cannot give up. We cannot give up telling your stories and all the others as well. So We've gone long, but these are such important stories. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you for sharing and getting up every morning and not giving up. We are praying for you, and we are with you, and Gidon's family and others, many others, are fighting every single day to win and to get these hostages home. Thank you, and thank you, Nitzan, for letting me do this. Don't feel comfortable.
This is a really touchful panel, but we haven't finished the evening. Please take a seat. I promise it's only a few minutes, but we would like to end this evening with a special song. The Israelis probably familiar with Naomi Shemer, and her song Let It Be, Lu Yehi in Hebrew, plays along together with the soldiers fighting in Gaza for the last 3 months. So let's take 2 minutes with Ariel Cohen, who will now sing iconic poet written in the wartime by Naomi Shemer. And
יש מפרש לבן באופק מול ענן שחור כבד כל שנבקש לו יהי ואם בחלונות הערב אור נרות החג רועד כל שנבקש לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי כל שנבקש לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי אנא לו יהי כל שנבקש לו יהי אם המבשר עומד בדלת תן מילה טובה בפיו כל שנבקש לו יהי אם נפשך למות שואלת מפריחה ומאסיף כל שנבקש לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי אנא לו יהי כל שנבקש לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי אנא לו יהי כל שנבקש לו יהי ואם פתאום יזרח מאופל על ראשנו אור כוכב כל שנבקש לו יהי אז תן שלווה ותן גם כוח לכל אלה שנאהב כל שנבקש לו יהי לו יהי לו יהי אנא לו יהי כל שנבקש לו יהי let it be let it be oh let it be כל שנבקש לו
Amen. Our friends from the Zoom, from different kinds of the world, that part of the Christian Media Summit, remember that every event that we are organized, we conclude it with a special prayer. So in Ethics of Father, פרקי אבות, chapter 1, verse 18, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel used to say, on three things the world stands, on justice, on truth, on the peace. It is our duty to fight for justice. It is our duty to fight to tell the truth. It is our duty to fight and strive for peace. You, the journalists, the voice of the world, are part of this challenge. So as a director of the GPO, I'm not from the UN, not from the ICG or ICC, who hopes Israel will win this war of justice in all our borders. Please join me in a prayer for safety of the state of Israel, our brave soldiers, and the speedy return of all our hostages. It is an honor to invite to the stage Mr. Gideon Bayer, the father of Sergeant Uriah Bayer, who recently fell in the course of duty. Please rise all. איפה אריאל גם פה? אוקיי. Our Father in heaven, in Jerusalem, we stand united, please, louder, praying for peace. Return our love once so brutally taken Gaza. Console the families and protect our soldiers fighting for peace in our land. Grant wisdom to our leaders. May this land symbolize unity in challenging times. Let us pray for the families of the brave who are refugees this home. Grant them tranquility, strength, and resilience. May them return home strong in body and mind. To this time, together, be blessing for all nations. Amen. So I wish you all a good evening and hope that you will continue to carry truth and justice with you wherever you go. Shalom, shalom, and God bless us. Hatikva.
כל עוד בלבב בנימה נפש יהודי הומיה ולפתי מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו התקווה בת שנות